Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 725 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, and today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. And we got a lot to do today, guys. We have to talk about Rangers in Vegas to take on the Golden Knights. Gerard Gallant heads back to Vegas, who he previously took to the Stanley Cup Final. And speaking of Gallant, I'm going to talk in this episode a little bit about the ongoing storyline, really, of his job security and why I think he's safe no matter what happens in this game. You never really can tell for sure, especially when James Dolan is the owner. You never know how it's going to go. But I would think that whereas the game against the Blues, you could probably buy into the fact that it's possible that his job was on the line in that game. I don't think that's the case, at least for this one game here tonight, and I'll explain why a little bit later. Also going to talk about, just preview the game in general, but then also talk about Filip Chytil potentially returning to the lineup for the Rangers. And also, as I was kind of prepping for the episode, I was looking at line combinations and what I think the Rangers could and should go with. And I noticed right before I hit record here that a couple of the Ranger beat reporters have posted the line combinations from the morning skate in Vegas. And I have it open in a separate window over here, and I'm not going to look at it. I mean, I kind of looked at it, but I didn't really process it. I just kind of glanced at it, and we're going to look at it together and just kind of react in real time here. But the big thing that I'm hoping for is that the Rangers stick with Lafreniere, Mika, and Kakko. That line seemed to really give the Rangers a spark. It really seemed to ignite them. A lot of hard work from that line in the third period. They were on the ice for 2 goals, including the one scored by Lafreniere. And as I mentioned in our most recent episode, the reason for me wanting that line to stay together, it's not just because, the kid's this and the kid's that. It's because it worked. And with the Rangers just scuffling and looking for answers, basically, and not really finding them for quite some time, you got to stick with anything that works. And that line clearly clicked for the Rangers in this most recent game. So I'm good with them hopefully making up the top line in this game. And I'm okay with Kreider moving down a little bit. Kreider, a little bit up and down this season. And obviously, him and Mika are really good friends and really close. And we've seen them have some really good games together. But hasn't really clicked that much recently, and I think it's okay to split them up at least once in a while. But the big news before I go any further with the line combinations and what I'd like to see here is that Filip Chytil was out there for the morning skate for the Rangers, so that would seem to bode well for his chances of playing in this game. And obviously, he just adds another weapon to this lineup, and hopefully he'll be out there because the Rangers are certainly going to be tested tonight. And if Chytil is out there, I'd like to see him remain with Artemi Panarin. Second line can be Chytil, centering Panarin, and I'll say Kravtsov. I think there's people that might want to see Trocheck remain with Panarin. And of course, with Chytil, he's not very good at faceoffs, so the Panarin line's going to be losing faceoffs left and right. I get all that, but we saw Panarin and Chytil link up for a really nice goal earlier this season against the Devils, right after they made these adjustments and put Chytil with Panarin. I'd like to, get another look at that combination. Chytil with Panarin, and then I'd say probably put Kravtsov on the right wing. And then for the third line, give me Trocheck centering Kreider on the left wing and Jimmy Vesey on the right wing. We saw Kreider and Vesey both move down from the top line to the third line. And this kind of, spreads out the scoring a little bit for the Rangers. I mean, Kreider and Trocheck, as far as forwards are concerned, that's 2 of your, highest scoring 5 forwards. And so this kind of spreads the wealth a little bit, spreads out the scoring, and hopefully, that'll click for the Rangers as well. And then for the fourth line, I'd like to see Goodrow at center, Sammy Blais on the left wing, and I'll say Julien Gauthier on the right wing. I think I want Gauthier out there just a little bit more than either Brodzinski or Carpenter. Gauthier, though, I will say, I feel like he's getting back to the point where he could be in at least some danger of finding himself as a healthy scratch in the not-too-distant future. Now, part of the thing that works in his favor right now is that the Rangers won their last game, and coaches don't like to mess with the lineup too much after a win. But yeah, Gauthier just hasn't stood out enough, and I realize part of that is he's on the fourth line, and he doesn't get a ton of ice time, but, he went through that little stretch there where he caught fire at least a little bit, and, hasn't really done a whole lot since. He hasn't been a very noticeable player the last handful of games. As far as the defense pairings are concerned, I would think they'd probably go with Lindgren and Fox, and they'll probably go Miller and Trouba, and then they'll go Hayek and Schneider. I think I'd like to see more of Miller and Schneider together because I think Schneider has played well this season. Jacob Trouba has obviously struggled, and as we know, he is playing through some nagging injuries. So if you put him on the third pairing along with Hayek, then that presumably would limit Trouba's ice time at least a little bit. And if he really is dealing with these injuries and they really are slowing him down and they really are affecting his play, then maybe you lighten the load a little bit for Trouba. And he can still be out there in other situations. I'm sure he'll still be out there on the second power play unit. He'll be out there for some PKs, and he'll probably be out there for better or worse toward the end of the game if the Rangers are, leading by a goal or two late in this one. So we'll see how that happens. But I want to also mention Ben Harper a little bit. We haven't really had a chance to talk about him all that much since the Rangers called him up. And we're going to do that in a second. We're also going to talk about Gerard Gallant and why I think he's safe, at least for this game tonight, regardless of what happens here. And we will do all that in just a second, like I said. But first, just got to let everybody know, today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get all the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league. From football to basketball to hockey to soccer and esports, we've got it all at betonline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. We are always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, we just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. And as I just mentioned, wanted to at least talk about Ben Harper a little bit here. It's obviously not like a blockbuster move, calling up Ben Harper from the AHL. The bigger news there is that Zach Jones was sent down, and, obviously it looks like he wasn't really going to play that much, and so they want Jones to get his reps at the AHL rather than sit in the press box every single night. But as far as Harper and what could end up happening here, I think Hayek needs to step it up a little bit. He went through a stretch there where I thought he played, decent, if unspectacular hockey, wasn't really making any mistakes. I don't think he's looked as good recently. There was a play not too long ago where he received a pass behind the Ranger net, couldn't handle it, fairly routine pass, got knocked down, and then it led to a goal for the opposition. That might have been the game against the Devils. But Hayek is going to have to play a little bit better if he's going to hold off Harper. And again, Harper, if you're not excited about him and you're not convinced that he's the answer, I get it. He is kind of just a journeyman at this point. But just for the quick rundown as far as who he is as a player, 6'6", 231 pounds, lefty shot. He was drafted by the Senators in the third round in 2013, has skated in 156 NHL games, 1 goal, 14 assists, has played for the Senators and Predators, had 19 games with the Predators last season, and in his career, which now spans 6 seasons, he's a -42, has 164 block shots and 254 hits. He has also averaged 60 minutes and 3 seconds of ice time per night. He has also played in 14 playoff games and has 3 assists in that time. He does save the Rangers a little bit of money because he is at the league minimum $750K, whereas Zach Jones on his ELC is making $925K a season. So there's a little bit of a saving there and more cap space accrual, for the trade deadline. And while we're on the subject of that, the Rangers are currently carrying 23 players. They were going with 22 for a while. They've got 14 forwards, 7 defensemen, and 2 goalies. I would think someone's probably going to get sent down fairly soon. Could be Brodzinski. Could maybe be Gauthier, but I don't know that they would want to, expose him to waivers again. We'll see what happens there. Maybe Carpenter. Carpenter would be exposed to waivers as well. I don't think he would get claimed, but we've been surprised a couple of other times this season. That is for sure. Most notably, Jared Tenorti being claimed. Maybe, a Kravtsov trade is in the works. We will see what happens there. But, I would imagine, once again, that the Rangers are probably going to want to get the roster number down to 22 sooner rather than later for the purposes of cap space accrual. The thing that I think right now, at least, probably saves Hayek from being a healthy scratch in tonight's game against the Vegas Golden Knights. Very simple fact that the Rangers won their last game. And Gallant, and he's not alone here, but he could be a little bit stubborn. I think we all know that. But his thing that I pretty much agree with is he doesn't really like to mess with the lineup that much, if you win your most recent game going into the next game. And I get that to an extent. I mean, obviously, look, if Philip Hedl is ready to go tonight, they're going to put him back out there and somebody's coming out. But, I do at least understand, why coaches do that. for the most part. I think sometimes you have to think on your feet and make adjustments, but, if a team gets an impressive win, and for the Rangers right now, anyone is an impressive win, then it does make sense to kind of roll with the same group. So I would imagine Libor Hajek will be back out there tonight. Ben Harper will probably be a healthy scratch. And with that, I also want to go ahead and, as promised, I'll go ahead and minimize the screen here for those of you watching on YouTube. And, this is the line combinations as tweeted out by Vince Mercogliano just a short time ago here. And like I said, I glanced at them, but I didn't really process it because I wanted to kind of do it live on the show here. So the line combinations for the Rangers this morning. So we're off to a good start. The top line, I think most people would agree and be in favor of this. We've got Mika Zibanejad centering Alexis Lafreniere and Kaapo Kakko. Like I said, that line really sparked this team in the most recent game. It gets the two, high draft picks into the top 6, into the top line, in fact, and it allows Alexis Lafreniere to play in the top 6 without having to move over to the right wing. So for all those reasons, I definitely like that. The second line is Chytil centering Panarin and Goodrow. I don't hate it, but I'd rather have Kravtsov there because Goodrow, to me, look, hardworking player. I really like him. I don't really see him as a top 6 type player. I think he's better off centering the fourth line, especially if you've got Mika and Chytil and Trocheck out there, and if Carpenter's out of the lineup, because if Carpenter's out of the lineup, you need somebody to center the fourth line. Curious decision there. I wouldn't mind seeing Kravtsov out there with Chytil and with Panarin. But I suppose with Goodrow, he can do a little bit of the grunt work and some of the dirty work for, more finesse players like Panarin and like Chytil. So then you got the third line, Trocheck centering Kreider and Vesey. That's exactly what we saw in the most recent game for the Rangers. Once they made the adjustments in the middle of the game, we had Kreider and Vesey moving from the top line down to the third line. And then you've got... And the other thing that's good about that is it kind of spreads out the scoring a little bit. Kreider and Trocheck, like I was saying earlier, give you a little bit of depth scoring and everything just more evenly distributed if you do it that way. And then, once again, per this tweet from Vince Mercogliano, you've got Blais, Gauthier, Carpenter, and Kravtsov all skating on the fourth line. And as Vince mentions in this tweet here, the belief is that, at least from Vince here, that Kravtsov is going to be the scratch tonight, which I'm not really in favor of. I guess if Kravtsov is only going to play the fourth line, then it really doesn't make any sense to have him out there. But what I would rather see than this, give me Kravtsov on the second line, give me Gaudreau centering the fourth line, and then give me Blais left wing fourth line and Gauthier right wing fourth line, and leave Carpenter out of the lineup. I don't think there's any real reason for Ryan Carpenter to be back into this lineup. He's fine for what he is, just kind of depth center and somebody that can be a healthy scratch on certain nights and be in the lineup on other nights. I don't know. I don't think Carpenter brings enough to the table to justify making Vitaly Kravtsov a healthy scratch. That's just my opinion. I know there's Ranger fans that aren't necessarily the biggest fans of Kravtsov, but even with that being the case, I think I would rather see Carpenter is the odd man out, Kravtsov, second line right wing, and then bump Gaudreau down to fourth line center. But we will see. It seems like they're going to go in a different direction. So we're going to talk about this game and preview the matchup against the Vegas Golden Knights and talk about why the Knights have been successful this season and how the Rangers match up against them. Talk about Gerard Gallant a little bit. We'll do all that good stuff in just a second. All right, so Rangers, Knights tonight, staying up late for a very late game. And the Rangers playing the Knights. The Rangers are 12-10-5 coming into this game. To me, that still means 12-15. I saw somebody on YouTube leave a comment and kind of debated with me about that because, for me, a loss is a loss. I know teams get a point for an overtime loss, but to me, if you lose the game, you lose the game. That it is what it is. The YouTube commenter mentioned that, 2 overtime losses is essentially the same as a win and a loss. And I get that. And honestly, I think most people would probably disagree with me on this, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just kind of old school. To me, if you lose the game, you lose the game. The Rangers, we can say they're 12-10-5 all we want. To me, that means 12-15 and, a little bit below 500 if you look at it that way. But anyway here, the Rangers are now 5th in the Metro with 29 points. The Knights As we mentioned, off to an outstanding start. They have 39 points with a record of 19, 7, and 1. That is 6 points better than any team in the Western Conference. And the Knights are really tough at home. 12, 2, and 1 to be exact. Something else of note here, though, is that the Rangers have actually been quite a bit better on the road than at home. And I've noticed this for a while, but I kind of wanted to wait until it became like a pretty undeniable trend. But yeah, I mean, when you look at it, the Rangers right now in the Garden are 5, 6, and 4. So they've scuffled a little bit at home. They are 7, 4, and 1 on the road, though. So obviously they need to be better at home, but they've kind of been solid as far as the road record is concerned. And I wonder if this kind of goes back to something that we've talked about in the past. The Rangers, they seem to play better and they seem to be sharper when they kind of have the underdog role. They were kind of this upstart team last season that was, playing with house money, quote unquote, even though I don't completely agree with the house money concept. But you get the idea. They go into the playoffs and they have home ice against the Penguins and they fall behind in that series. They're down 3-1. They have that bulldog mentality and they come back. They're down 2-0 as well as 3-2 against the Carolina Hurricanes. They come back and win that series. So it's almost like when the Rangers are viewed as the underdogs or when they fancy themselves the underdogs or whatever it might be, they seem to play a little bit better under those circumstances. And one thing is for sure, they're going to be the underdogs tonight. I haven't looked at the betting line, but I don't need to. With Vegas off to this kind of a start and the Rangers scuffling a little bit, other than that third period against the Blues, seems pretty certain that the Rangers will be considered the underdog for this game. And as I mentioned, I think this will be the Rangers' biggest win of the season, the best win of the season, if they are able to claim it, regardless of how it plays out, given the quality of opponent and given the fact that the Rangers are desperately trying to turn around this season before it really starts to spiral here. Starting goalies have not been announced, at least as of this recording. I got to believe it's going to be Igor Shesterkin. Rangers really need points. And if you go with Halak against a team like this, I mean, you're already kind of digging a hole. I'm not even using that to take a shot against Halak. It's more just that, you can't possibly think that you have a better chance of, going in there and beating this team, this dominant team with Halak than you would with Igor. And honestly, with Gerard Gallant, if you believe some of the reports that his seat is heating up and that Dolan is keeping a close eye on Gallant and on Drury, whatever that means, if you believe all that stuff, then if you're Gerard Gallant, who are you going to go with? Igor Shesterkin or Yaroslav Halak? Yeah, I would be stunned if it's anybody but Igor tonight. And then the Knights on dailyfaceoff.com, they have Logan Thompson listed as the unconfirmed starter for tonight's game. And, either way, the Rangers are going to play a good goalie because Thompson's off to a really nice start. He has started 18 games. Aiden Hill has started 9. Thompson, 18, 13, and 5. Goals against average of .255, a save percentage of .921, and 2 shutouts. Aiden Hill, interestingly, has the same .255 goals against average that Thompson does. But either way, Rangers are going to be tested there, and keep our fingers crossed that whoever starts for the Knights maybe has a little bit of an off night, or at least doesn't go into complete beast mode. I think we'll even take that. Jack Eichel. Now, this is interesting because he's currently considered day-to-day. He missed the most recent game against the Bruins. He was day-to-day for that game as well. And obviously, I don't wish injury on anybody, but he, sat with the lower body injury. And the Knights are not as good of a team if he's not in the lineup. So far this season for Eichel, he has 13 goals and 16 assists in 26 games, so more than a point per game. And the Knights, they've got some depth scoring to be sure. 7 players with 18 or more points to start the season. Eichel, as I just mentioned, leading the way. You got Mark Stone, Chandler Stevenson, and Shea Theodore with 21 points each. Jonathan Marchessault has 20 points. As far as special teams matchups, Vegas is only 17th in the league in power play success at 22.1%. The Ranger penalty kill has dropped all the way down to 13th at 79.8%. The Rangers were cruising along there. They were top 5 in the PK, but they had an awful night against the Blackhawks, really in every single aspect of hockey, but also the penalty kill. The Blackhawks went 3 for 4 on the power play, and so the Rangers kind of went tumbling there as far as the PK success rate is concerned. And then, of course, the Blues went 1 for 4 against the Rangers, which doesn't sound terrible. It's not terrible, but, it does hurt your success rate because that's, 25% success rate there. So on the flip side, Vegas is actually not very good on the penalty kill. This is one of the few weak spots that, is really that noticeable when you check the numbers. They are just 24th in the league at 74.3%. The Rangers need to get the power play going. We've been talking about that, and this seems like a good night to potentially do it. You hope that, maybe Julian Gauthier can do the Gauthier special, and he can draw a penalty. He's drawn a lot of penalties this season, especially when you consider his limited ice time. But, man, if the Rangers can get on the power play, that's going to be huge in this game because, as I just mentioned, the PK for Vegas, one of their few noted weak spots here. And as far as the Ranger power play, they are now 20th at 21.4%, so a chance to get right here against the Knights. And for anybody wondering, I think some people would be curious to know about this. Brett Howden's still on the Vegas Golden Knights. 21 games this season, 1 goal and 2 assists, which sounds about right. And as I say that, I pretty much come to grips with the fact that he's totally scoring a goal tonight, isn't he? No, hopefully not. Hopefully the Rangers can hold him off the score sheet, if he even plays, because obviously, he hasn't played in all their games this season. And then I wanted to talk about Gerard Gallant. Obviously, look, again, if you believe some of these reports that Dolan is watching them closely, then you never know what's going to happen. But I mentioned going into the game against the Blues that I thought that Gallant would have the rest of this week to figure it out. They were home against the Blues, at the Knights, and then Friday they'll be at the Avalanche. I think if the Rangers win 2 out of 3 of those games in any fashion, he will be safe. And I can't imagine that after the Rangers beat the Blues, like if they lose to the Knights tonight, are they really going to fire Gallant then? And send some coach to Colorado to take over the team then? Probably not. So I don't think Gallant's job is on the line tonight, no matter what happens. And again, we may never know for sure if his job was on the line against the Blues. I would lean toward probably not, but you never know for sure. The Rangers had obviously been sputtering, and a lot of fans, calling for a change. And, again, the reports that, Drury and Gallant both being watched very closely. So we will see, but like I said, I don't think Gallant's job will be in jeopardy tonight, even if the Rangers lose this game, assuming it's not 8-0 or something along those lines. And knock on wood that doesn't happen. So that'll pretty much do it for today, guys. One more thing I want to do, though, was thank you for helping me reach 1,000 subscribers on the Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thank you guys so much for everybody that's subscribed. Anybody who is not subscribed, please do so whenever you get an opportunity. And again, there are some things that are YouTube exclusive. They only go on YouTube. Every episode will always be available on any audio platform that you can think of. But, if I'm on a different podcast as a guest or a couple of other things as well, if I'm on Locked On NHL, those things appear exclusively on the YouTube channel. So you definitely want to subscribe. And again, thank you guys so much for help getting the show to the 1,000 subscriber threshold. And that will pretty much do it for today, guys. Once again, if you'd like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. And definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @LO_NY_Rangers. Once again, that is @LO_NY_Rangers. And like I said, definitely subscribe to the Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I'll see you next time. Thanks for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast, the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts.